just like
here.
I dreamed it would be.
Where you from? Where from?
I feel like we're frozen in time. You're the only one I could see. Hey, I've looked all my life for you. Now you're here. Hey, I've spent all my life
Angus up. Angus up. Can I start now? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and may I start off... Susan? Thanks. Thank you so much, Susan. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much. Let me start off by just saying Happy International Mountains Day. Yes. I've been looking forward to today for so many days. I love mountains and I'm absolutely passionate about glaciers. I was just speaking to a scientist now and I was trying to estimate how many glaciers I had visited, and I told him where I had sailed and where I climbed, and he said it's probably in the thousands. But of those thousands, two glaciers I think I will never, ever forget. The first is Ilulissat, so in western Greenland. Ilulissat is an extraordinary glacier. So just to give some background, I'm an endurance swimmer, and I like to swim in places which are very, very fragile, and then afterwards try to get them protected. And so I did a swim across the face of the Ilulissat glacier, which is about 10 kilometers. The water, obviously, in Ilulissat is very, very cold, but what's so astonishing are the glaciers. Those glaciers are absolutely, that glacier is absolutely enormous, but the icebergs which come off it are 1 kilometer tall. So I want you to imagine getting into your Speedo and diving into the water, and you have an iceberg which is 1 kilometer tall carving off near you, and now you're going to swim past it. And so obviously when it gets into the water, you have got 100 meters above the water, but it's 900 meters below you of ice. And when you go into that water, your world changes completely. Two things happen. Number one, there are only two colors. When I always breathe to my right. When I breathe to my right, it's just pure white. And when I put my head in the water, it's just pure blue. No other colors, just two colors. The other thing is the sounds of these icebergs scraping up against the bottom of the floor of the ocean, against each other. You know, to swim in Ilulissat is to swim through history. And that glacier has been moving now at a speed of 40 meters per day in summer. I mean, think about that, 40 meters per day in summer. And it's like a motorway of ice coming out of the mouth of that fjord. They say that the iceberg which sank the Titanic came from Ilulissat, and we know what they said about the Titanic. The second glacier, which has left such an enormous mark on me, is the Lewis Glacier. Now let me just explain that it's not named after me, but it is the main glacier on Mount Kenya. And this week, I climbed up to the top of Mount Kenya to visit the Lewis Glacier. And I can tell you something, I haven't been so deeply moved by something like that. I mean, this glacier now, they expect to disappear in the next 3 to 5 years. And when you see it, it's so deeply shocking. It's just a tiny, tiny slither of ice at the top of Mount Kenya. And to think that we have had glaciers on Mount Kenya for between 10,000 and 30,000 years, and in our lifetime, those glaciers now, the last glaciers in Africa, will disappear. And so every single fraction of a degree of warming now matters. And that's why I'm so grateful to all of you for spending the time to come here, to listen to the latest science, to listen to how we can help local communities to adapt to the changes which are taking place. But before we start a panel discussion, and before Susan comes up and speaks to you, I'd just like to show a short video which UNEP helped give some of the science and do some of the interviews. So could you please play the video?
My granddaughter, I don't know if she will see them all.
The Earth's going to survive. It's survived worse than the human race.
I wonder if in the interim we can ask Susan to come up on stage. Susan Gardner, you'll all know her. She is UN Environment Programme Ecosystems Division's Head Director, and she's going to speak to us now to give some introductory remarks. So here we go.
Well, Louis, thank you so much. I love how you brought the mountaintops and the sea together. Like only you can, having experienced that one stroke at a time. I can't even imagine what that must have been like to really be immersed in that environment. Thank you for capturing that so well for us. Excellencies, colleagues, yes, happy International Mountain Day. That's fantastic that we're here to have this conversation today. You know, right, makes me think of an experience I had earlier this year when I visited Assam, which is in northeast India. And for me, that was the closest I have ever been to the Himalaya Mountains. Absolutely breathtaking with those priceless glaciers. And you know, when you get a chance to stand there like I was in one of the fields of one of our sustainable agriculture projects. That connection is strikingly obvious. Assam's rivers and the livelihoods built around them obviously begin in the Himalayas. Those glaciers are truly the water towers of Asia, and they're changing so fast, as you heard the personal experience described by Louis. At 2 degrees warming, only about a quarter of the ice is likely to remain, and that single change would actually put water security and lives of 2 billion people at risk across a vast region, if you think about stretching from Pakistan to Bangladesh to Myanmar. And when you speak about farming communities, when you have a chance to meet these families in Assam, you can immediately feel what's at stake for these children and these parents and these communities. For the farmers, the melting glacier it's not just a scientific trend and lots of data that we see. It's a question of whether they're going to have food on their table. It's a question of whether they're actually going to have the resources, the money to pay school fees for their children. And we see the same story across the world. Glaciers are shrinking at a pace the communities and ecosystems are struggling to keep up with. I think we're struggling to even comprehend what you've described, Louis. Some impacts are immediately visible, like unstable water flows or the loss of crops, the pressure on fragile livelihoods. Those can already be felt, but then there's all these other changes that lie beneath the surface that we may not know much about or not quite understand. This year's UNEP Frontiers report looked at microorganisms that are released from melting glaciers and permafrost. I mean, think about these organisms that have survived millennia in frozen landscapes, some of which are active pathogens. And so we really don't understand enough about what that's going to be like and how they're going to behave in a warming world. The consequences, of course, don't stop at mountain valleys. They don't stop at the river basins. Depending on how quickly the glaciers melt, we're going to potentially face several meters of sea level rise over the coming decades and centuries. And you're going to hear more about that in the presentations today and in this important discussion. as the ice retreats, something else also happens. You're going to have entire landscapes that are going to emerge. And in this case, we're talking about areas the size of Nepal. So are we ready for that? How are we going to manage these landscapes? So we're going to lose the reflective capacity of those white glaciers, that white surface of those glaciers that's been reflecting all this time. And we're going to need that new vegetation to actually start contributing to climate. But that also comes with a very narrow window right now of opportunity for us to be prepared for that. If we want these post-glacial ecosystems to actually store carbon and to actually be a source of thriving biodiversity, we have to act very quickly to ensure we've got good management and good planning. And this is a chance also to strengthen our thinking in terms of the climate-nature nexus, to extend 30 by 30 to these areas, these deglaciated landscapes, make sure they're part of our land and sea planning. All these actions of countries that can actually help them in terms of their commitments on the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, as well as the Paris Agreement. But, there is good news, and that is, I guess, that communities are already figuring out ways to adapt. Solutions can be very practical. We can draw on science. We have indigenous knowledge, invaluable. We have examples like in Pakistan, the Living Indus Initiative, which received a UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration World Restoration Flagship Award, uses that indigenous knowledge and techniques that's known as glacier grafting. It actually helps to stabilize water flows. In Azerbaijan, small grants support mountain communities to be able to improve their irrigation systems of water that's been fed by glacier melt. And just here in Kenya, Mount Kenya is promoting knowledge about trout farming that can help communities actually retain water. In Kyrgyzstan, there's a community conservation fund that strengthens local resilience in high mountain regions. And with the funding from the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, we have the Adaptation at Altitude Solution Portal that helps countries actually learn from one another so that solutions can travel fast, helping each other learn from experiences. Of course, I think it's said in every speech probably this week, and so we all know the talking points. You can't do this. These ideas cannot grow unless we have funding. And so it is so important that we're paying attention to these priorities to ensure that there's public and private and blended finance that's at scale to match this challenge. And then we have a lot of solutions at hand. And in this context, I want to thank Austria and Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, and Switzerland for this crucial support to UNEP's mountain work that we've been proud to do in partnership with you. And we've been very proud to see how UNEA 7 has created space for this conversation that helps shed a light on the future direction of our work. There's a number of regional frameworks that you're going to hear about today as well that carry out important
I'm going to have two people. I'm going to invite them up onto stage. I'm going to invite, please, James Kirkham, who's the Chief Science Advisor for the International Climate Cryosphere Initiative, and Karen Landmark, who's the Managing Director of GRID Arendal. Would you please, yes, please, if you please come up onto stage, and perhaps it's best that you start, James.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today, and thank you, Lewis, for the introduction. Could I please have the slides on the screen, please? Okay, here we go. So, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends, We gather here today in a world that has already been dramatically changed by the burning of fossil fuels. Just this year, we've seen record temperatures across Asia and North America, deadly floods in Pakistan, Nigeria, South Korea, and Indonesia, wildfires ripping across Europe and Alaska, and a Category 5 hurricane that wreaked havoc across the Caribbean. We're on track to change our home beyond recognition, and nowhere is this more obvious than in our polar and high mountain areas, which are warming much faster than anywhere else in the world. Now, this enhanced heating is already having a visible and dramatic impact on the world's glaciers, these vital lifelines for over 2 billion people. And what you're about to see in the red segments on these charts here is the amount of ice that's already been lost in these glaciers over the last 20 years alone. You can see high mountain Asia has lost nearly 10%, Scandinavia has lost 14%, large parts of the Arctic have lost between 3 and 7% already, Western Canada has lost 23% of its glacier ice already, and Alaska, that number is almost 10%. But some regions have actually lost far more than this already. So in the Caucasus, we've lost 35% of its glacier ice in the last 20 years. In Central Europe, where I'm from, we've lost nearly 40% already. And in the incredibly important water towers of the southern Andes, that number is nearly 13%. Now, this ice loss is having dramatic and disastrous impacts already today. So in May this year, the collapse of a glacier buried a Swiss village. Buildings that had been homes for centuries were wiped away in an instant. And disasters like this are becoming increasingly common, not just in the Alps, but in every single mountain region of the world, because glacier ice loss and permafrost thaw is accelerating. Elsewhere, enhanced glacier melt in Pakistan combined with monsoon rains this summer, releasing deadly flash floods that killed over 70 people. Now, for the first time in modern history, countries are witnessing glacier extinctions. Slovenia was the first country to lose all of its glaciers. This was followed by Venezuela in a high-profile case last year. Now, unfortunately, these countries will not be the last to achieve this grim milestone. All of the flags you see on this screen here will have really just a couple of decades, or even in some cases, just a few years left before they follow the fate of glaciers in Slovenia and Venezuela. Excellencies, colleagues, the amount of glacier ice that will be left on Earth in the coming centuries is in your hands here at UNEP 7. With current country NDCs, that's nationally determined contributions, Scandinavia will no longer have glaciers. Iceland will keep only 4% of its glacier ice, and the iconic mountains of the Alps will have only 7% of its glacier ice remaining. Current NDCs will diminish the vast water stores in the Himalayas, the Caucasus, Central Asia, and the Andes, with only between about 40 and 16% remaining. 1.5 degrees saves glaciers. Losses will still be substantial in the most vulnerable regions of the world, but with close to half of glacier ice preserved in many regions, adaptation will remain feasible. Excellencies, the actions you must take here at UNEP 7 and more broadly to keep 1.5 degrees in reach could save twice as much glacier ice globally and up to 10 times more for many of the countries present in this room here today. Billions of people are counting on you to keep glaciers on Earth for their future. As well as in the mountains, alarming changes are happening to the Earth's vast ice sheets. And these polar ice sheets are so enormous that you could fit the entirety of Europe in Antarctica, but covered by a layer of ice that is 4 kilometers thick. Losses from these polar ice sheets have quadrupled since the 1990s. The areas you can see in these videos in red here have lost 7 trillion tons in the last 30 years alone. Now, because those ice losses are accelerating, sea levels are now rising twice as fast as they were 30 years ago. And we're accelerating towards rates that the IPCC says that countries will struggle to adapt to by the end of this century. This sea level rise is already amplifying the damage caused by extreme weather events, including the terrible storm surges that devastate communities in the hurricane season every single year. And this is costing billions of dollars, and the damage is only growing year by year. Now, with those costs in mind, scientists like myself are extremely worried because our ice sheets are vulnerable to a series of vicious amplifying cycles. In this video, you can see that the surface of the Greenland ice sheet has lowered by up to 20 meters in places over the last 30 years. And as the ice lowers, it exposes more and more of the ice to warmer air temperatures, which causes more amplifying melting and more lowering in a vicious feedback. Similar vicious feedbacks also exist in Antarctica, related to the warming ocean rather than the air. Excellencies, we are currently in great peril because science now shows that even 1.5 degrees, if we stay there for too long, is too high for the Earth's ice sheets. And even today's temperatures, if we stay here for too long, will cause seas to rise by several meters over the coming centuries. Avoiding this will require a global temperature that is actually cooler than present, probably close to about 1 degree above pre-industrial levels, or even below that. Now, if we fail to address this problem, the costs will be unimaginable. In many parts of the world, just 10 centimeters of sea level rise causes coastal flooding to happen 10 times more often. With temperatures higher than 1.5 degrees as well, the rate of sea level rise becomes too fast for many nature-based solutions like mangroves, salt marshes, and these coastal ecosystems that are being used as nature-based solutions all around the world today. Global coastlines are so vulnerable to this threat, not only for the most vulnerable low-lying or island nations, but also for some of the world's largest economies and the world's largest emitters. Now, alongside accelerating glacier and ice sheet losses, Arctic permafrost is becoming increasingly thawed in a widespread fashion, which emits emissions on the scale of a top 20 emitter every single year now. Sea ice extent has declined at both poles, fueling amplified warming and extreme weather, and ocean acidity has now crossed a planetary boundary, especially in the Arctic Ocean, which will affect fisheries and ocean ecosystems. Excellencies, colleagues, we gather here today at UNEP 7 in a world that has already been dramatically changed by the burning of fossil fuels, and it is now for you to decide how much worse that damage will get. The task we have before us is huge, but it is a task we cannot afford to fail at. Luckily, we know what to do. Whilst temporarily overshooting 1.5 degrees is now inevitable, urgent action starting this year can still bring temperatures back down to 1.2 degrees by the end of this century and below 1 degree in the long term, which is the true safe limit for the Earth's cryosphere. Achieving this will require phasing out coal in the 2040s, gas in the 2050s, and oil in the 2060s, alongside reversing deforestation, cutting methane emissions, and scaling up land-based carbon dioxide removal. These actions will require political courage. But as we heard from UNEP's GEO7 report this week, the world will be rewarded economically for these actions within decades, and the stabilization of the Earth's cryosphere will be a reward that we cannot put a price on. The world is watching our actions here at UNEP 7. Let's not fail them. Thank you very much.
My name is Karen Landmark. I've been asked to be quite quick. I'll do my best. 7 minutes. Can I have my slides? Yes. I'll just check the next one. Okay, so I'm very pleased to be here. It's a soft launch, this. of a joint UNEP and Grid Arendal publication, which has the name Mountains in Motion, Addressing Global Linkages from Ridge to River. As we know, 2025 marks the first International Year of the Glacier Preservation. It's to shed light on the important issue of melting cryosphere, as James has pointed to us in a very, very convincing way. Through the publication, we will look at some more linkages between what happens in the mountains and the rest of the planet. Okay, so what's mountains? You see. Many definitions of mountains. According to the latest one, mountains cover just over 30% of the world land masses. That's excluding Antarctica. You can see on the map on the gray areas. Present on all continents. Globally, the mountain areas host about 2.1 billion people, of which 825 of them million live in one of the many cities located in the mountains. And actually, where we sit now, the western part of Nairobi is one of them. And we know the world population has increased by double since 1975, and the tendency can we also see in the mountains. Sorry. There. It's a little bit hard to see. So, okay, sorry. Okay, and mountains, peaks have linkages to plains, streams and rivers flowing down, of course. Almost all major rivers originate from a mountain area, even if the river outlet is located far, like in the River Nile, the Amazon, or the River Ganges. As James also mentioned, these links materialize also in our country's economies and sometimes cultural beliefs. Mountains hold ecosystem services useful to us humans, like water storage, used for clean energy production, regulation of climate with carbon sinks, or regulation of erosion processes. So, having healthy mountains contribute to a healthy planet and healthy people, which is a known slogan. First, healthy mountains can reduce risk of disasters, of having disasters. We take the example of the South Caucasus region on this map, covering the three countries of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. In this region, featuring a rare slope gradient from land 28 meters below sea level near the Caspian Sea in the east to several peaks above 5,000 meters above sea level. This region is also one of the region experiences one of the fastest glacier melt rates globally, having lost over 35% of its total ice mass in the 2 past decades. You see that, the blue on the top of the map. And according to the International Disaster Database, between 2000 and 2023, in total, 21 major disasters were reported, affecting a total of 1.8 million people, with the price tag of approximately $1.7 billion of damage. Sorry. This database also shows that the 3 countries located in a relatively small region experience disasters in very different ways. Armenia, landlocked, is more prone to hailstorm and droughts. Azerbaijan, featuring a large plain where the Kura River gathers, the water flowing down the 2 mountain ranges, as you can see. Most events recorded are linked to the Kura River flooding. And in Georgia, is affected mostly by riverine or flash flood occurring in the mountain valleys and foothills. Healthy mountain slopes are also linked to reduce land degradation. How am I doing on time? Okay, good. This illustration, you can see on the left side the drivers of land degradation in the mountains, and on the right side you see the land degradation solutions that can be implemented. And I'll talk briefly about both of them. Herding, for instance, is a traditional activity in mountains for which changing climate and inadequately adapted practices can lead to overgrazing, especially in the context of melting glacier. Forests are a distinctive attribute for mountains, and in the last 2 decades, 78 million hectares of mountain forest has disappeared. Area comparable with the country of Finland. The issue of forest fires in mountain areas are mostly limited to agricultural practices to expand arable area from the lowlands to the mountains. And even though at this point mountain forest fires are still limited, they are expecting to increase due to increasing and warmer temperatures. Okay, so let's quickly look at the possible potential solution. To prevent overgrazing, consultation between practitioners, decision makers, and science community is needed for a more adaptive governance to put in place the tailored nature-based solution, such as rotational grazing to reduce pressure on landscapes, or introduction of alternative gender-inclusive livelihoods. And to limit forest fires, improving regulations at the national level to limit agriculture encroaching and monoculture is needed to preserve a mountain forest, especially in tropical regions such as Southeast Asia. And to prevent forest loss, a solution with demonstrated impact is to increase the coverage of protected areas. And then let's look at the link to biodiversity before I will conclude. Protecting mountain forests and landscapes is needed to reach the Aichi target of 30% of the planet's area in land and sea under protected area. Today, less than 90% of the mountain area are in protected areas, which is essential for biodiversity conservation. Of the more than 16,000 key biodiversity areas identified by the scientific community worldwide, about 40% is in mountains areas. Consequently, there is still a gap between actual protected area coverage and the need to have more of them to better preserve biodiversity. In addition, mountain region harbor about 87% of world's amphibians, birds, and mammals. And we see that mountains are warming faster than these species can cope with. Environmental conditions vary greatly from one season to another, and habitats can change over a few years. Good. In conclusion, we would like to emphasize that mountains are not remote or isolated realms. They are a vital planetary life support system linked to global stability, sustainability, and human well-being. There is a need to strengthen sustainable management of mountain ecosystem, to improve resilience of indigenous and local communities, and investing in mountains should be a global imperative to improve both water security, climate resilience, and transboundary cooperation. As we have heard, mountains are experiencing rapid change, and stronger adaptation measures will benefit communities and ecosystems far beyond the peaks. The report will be launched fully sometime early next year. Thank you so much.
James and Karen, thank you very, very much for your presentations. We're very, very grateful. I'm now going to invite onto stage a panel discussion. So could I invite the 4 panelists, please, up onto stage. First, we have the Minister of Environment for Peru, We also, thank you so much. We also have the Honourable Secretary, the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources for Bhutan. We have the first Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture for Georgia. And we have the Head of Department for the Committee for Environmental Protection from Tajikistan. Thank you so much. So I found those last two presentations absolutely fascinating. We know that we are losing glaciers very rapidly. We know we need ice. It keeps our planet cool. It keeps us within a temperature range in which we can all live. We need ice for drinking. We need ice for agriculture. We need the water for agriculture. We need the water for industry. And we need it for energy production. It's absolutely essential. And so my question to all the panelists is very, very simple. How can we use these big conferences to help protect ice and also to protect the people that rely on the ice so that they can adapt to these fast changes? So perhaps we can start with the Minister of Environment for Peru. Thank you.
Well, first, thanks to the UNEP for the invitation to address this decisive issue for Peru and for the millions of people who depend on mountain ecosystems. Well, Peru is one of the world's most vulnerable countries to climate change, especially due to its geography and its sensitive ecosystems. Our country concentrates 68% of the tropical glaciers around the world, but however, has lost more than 66% of them over the last 6 decades. This particular situation moved forward Peru into the adaptation. Peru has placed adaptation at the heart of its climate policy. Through the National Plan of Adaptation and our new NDCs 3.0, we are promoting nature-based solutions and the restoration of wetlands and high Andean peatlands, among others. For instance, we have also a mechanism of retribution for environmental services. That basically is a finance mechanism that that the people that are benefit from the ecosystems and environmental services such as hydric regulation needs to pay. And this payment constitutes a fund to restore the high basins ecosystems. For instance, with restoration of forests, restorations, and nature-based solutions. Why? To produce and keep producing the environmental services that are necessary for the provision of water to the local communities. Also, we maintain up-to-date inventories of glaciers and lagoons, conduct annual measurements of change in volume hydrological contributions, and for instance, we have also an Institute of Research of Glaciers and Mountain Ecosystems, that is called INAIHAM, that make also updating the inventories. These national efforts must be accompanied not only by the force for Peruvian authorities. Also, we are always looking for international cooperation, and obviously the environmental multilateralism turns science into action. This assembly, along with the Rio Convention, can strengthen this agenda, promoting coherent global frameworks, especially to articulate the Paris Agreement, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and also the Convention to combat desertification. We think these are fundamental to understanding the climate-nature nexus to the mountain regions. For my country, it's urgent to mobilize technical cooperation and accessible finance to strengthen glacier monitoring, natural infrastructure, and early warning systems that, in a complementary way, that the efforts that we make as a government. We also welcome the first call for proposals announced by the Loss and Damage Fund, a finance mechanism within the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Peru will prioritize in this call the attention to the irreversible impacts of the glacier retreat on the most vulnerable Andean communities. The conservation of the cryosphere and the resilience to our mountains depend on our collective efforts and our collective capacity. Peru is ready to continue contributing with science, solutions, and cooperation, but we need also the international community and the multilateralism to move to this place. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So just to confirm what the actual question is, the question is, how can we use these type of conferences to protect glaciers, to protect ice, but also to enable people impacted by the melting? How can we help them adapt? So could I ask our honorable guest from Bhutan now to answer that question? And could I please ask if you could keep it within about 2 minutes?
Thank you.
Apologies.
Thank you, and happy International Mountains Day. Good afternoon. Bhutan will speak with a profound sense of urgency and responsibility. For us, cryosphere is not an abstract scientific term, but it is the very foundation of our identity, our economy, and our own survival. The Himalayan glaciers sustain our rivers, power our homes, nourish our farms, and anchor our cultural heritage. The Himalayas are warming at a rate far above the global average, as we have seen in the two presentations. This warming translates, in the case of Bhutan, for globs that threatens lives, infrastructures, and centuries-old heritage that we have. It means growing water insecurity, and it also means changes that within our lifetime will never be reversible. In this context, environmental multilateralism through UNEP and the Rio Conventions remains our strongest and indeed our only viable pathway to protect the world's snow and ice while building resilience. In the case of UNEP, as the world's universal environmental decision-making platform, can play a pivotal role. First, it can strengthen the global science policy interface. Today, if you see, cryosphere science is distributed across agencies like UNEP, WMO, and UNESCO. Bhutan therefore supports a UNEP mandate for a regular, integrated global cryosphere assessment coordinated by an interagency task force to provide unified and authoritative science to policymakers. 2, UNEP can promote enhanced early warning systems, particularly for cryosphere-related hazards like globs, with UNEP leading technology development and capacity sharing for vulnerable mountain nations. 3rd, UNEP can ensure the cryosphere is mainstreamed across all environmental policy discussions, acknowledging that snow and ice underpin water, food, energy systems worldwide. 4th, UNEP can help drive ambitious global action by building momentum for stronger NDCs under the Paris Agreement, including targeted reduction of short-lived climate pollutants, such as black carbon, that is very harmful to our ice. Second, in the case of Rio Conventions, they form a backbone of our global environment governance, and coordinated action across these three is therefore very critical.
Thank you. Apologies, time is quite short, so I'd like to now give thank you so much for your intervention, to give the floor to our colleague from Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues. First of all, I would like to start with a small clarification. I'm here on behalf of Ms. Nino Tandilashvili, First Deputy Minister. Yes, she's now chairing the plenary session as a bureau member, and I'm speaking here on her behalf, and I represent the Ministry of Environment, Protection, Agriculture, Department of Environment and Climate Change. Head of
Thank you so much for that clarification. Thank you.
Yes, it is a great honor for me to speak here on behalf of Georgia and express our sincere appreciation for the invitation to participate in this very important event, and which is dedicated to the accelerating loss of ice and snow in mountain regions, a challenge that fundamentally shapes our shared climate future. Georgia's recent national assessments clearly demonstrates that the Caucasus region is undergoing rapid and profound climate transformation. We had here the very important and interesting presentations, and thank you for this. And I will not stop now only the national activities related to overcome these challenges, and how can, your question was, how can these kind of platforms, events, and international agreements help countries, and in this regard I would like to highlight that we believe that international cooperation should prioritize first strengthening global cryosphere monitoring with harmonized methodologies and open interoperable data frameworks. Second, advancing modeling of glacier melt and hazard projection, including permafrost dynamics and glacier lake evolution. Third, integrating snow, ice, and heat-related risk information into national policies, infrastructure planning, and water management, water-related issues, and it was also highlighted during the introduction presentation, and this is also very important for us. And increasing dedicated climate finance for mountain regions, especially for early warning and local resilience. And finally, deepening knowledge exchange among mountain countries, so strengthening shared understanding and joint adaptation strategies. So it was from our side, these our ideas, our priorities, and our request to considerate these topics when planning such kind priority activities and events also. And the loss of ice and snow combined with rising extreme heat is transforming mountain regions for more rapidly than previously imagined, we all know. And yes, through science-based action, international solidarity, and sustainable investment, we can protect lives, ecosystems, and the future of our mountain communities. So it was my side. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. I'd now like to hand over to our honorable colleague from Tajikistan.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, Your Excellency, the ministers, distinguished partners and friends. First of all, thank you for the invitation to this event. We are very happy to be here with you. And regarding your question, I think there are several points that we can raise, but it's always nice to come last and let people see if you can say something new. So nothing new. I think we are working together on all of this. We are through this process. We are here at the UNEP, and I think it's a beautiful platform, one of the most greatest one, the biggest one, and the useful one for us to work on the things that we are discussing today. And just few quick points from our point of view. the UNEP and other related platforms can give us the science-based platform, which is really important from our perspective, because Tajikistan is in Central Asia, where 65% of its water resources springs from the glaciers that we have in our mountains. So I think bringing this to the international platform with the science-based solutions would really benefit the whole planet, and we have to seek this together. And again, the international process, the cooperation that we have, it's really important for us for mobilizing resources and financial and technical support, because Tajikistan as developing country, we are, in terms of our NDC and GHG emissions, we are ranked number 132 in terms of our GHG emissions, but yet we are one of the most vulnerable country in the world for the negative impacts of climate change and glacier melt. So I think this platform should also give us the opportunity to work on this technical and financial resources and support from our partners. And also we can talk about the knowledge exchange and capacity building, and during the presentations we've heard a lot of interesting things on that we will hopefully see reflected in the report. So I think that is also one of the key points where we have to work together and find solutions for all of us. And finally, this cooperation, these platforms can allow us to look beyond the national borders, because when we talk about the glacier melt, when we say that 65% of water resources spring from our glaciers, particularly in Central Asia, this is not the issue for Tajikistan itself. This is the issue for all our neighbors. This is the issue for the whole planet, because we are talking about the most important thing in our life. I think it's water, and it comes from the mountains, from Pamir Mountains, which are 7,000 meters above the sea level, and it comes all the way to the sea and plays its role on the sea level rise and things like the important things related to that. So I think we really have we should take benefit of this platform and try to work on this together. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. We now have 8 minutes for the audience to ask some questions for our panelists. I see somebody at the back there with his hand up, so let's go for it. Can we get a microphone in the back there, please? Okay. I'm so sorry, we can't hear you.
Thank you. I'm Mukesh Pokhil from Kathmandu, Nepal. I am from Himalayan countries. Due to global warming, incidents are happening all over the world. It is not news for us. Nepal is one of the part where is every year melting glacier and happening floods. And my question is, how can reduce this impact, and how can provide who are affecting from the glacial lake outburst floods and other things. Context of Nepal, many lakes are in China territory. Its impact in Nepal and India. How can establish early warning system between countries? How is important part between established early warning system between countries?
Fantastic.
That is my questions.
Thank you. Which one of you would like to...
Anyone can address my questions.
Who would like to answer that question about early warnings? I think it's on. Yep. There we go.
Maybe if I share our experiences, I think what we have done is we have set up early warning systems, and also warning systems in the sense that we give prior notice to the settlements and the communities when we foresee and this is a 24-hour kind of a system. And when we are not able to protect even with the early warning system, then what we do is we resettle them at a safer place. And this is what we do. And of course, glacial melt is something that we cannot stop. So I think we have to look at adaptation measures, how we adapt it, though we can also do mitigation measures, but it is really difficult to do mitigation measures. So I think we have to look at adaptation as the solution.
And presumably, do you have some resistance from people who don't want to move?
No, I think you have to make sure that you're able to convince them. You have to be making them as part of the team. I think they also benefit out of this activity that we initiate. So you have to explain to them properly. And of course, their welfare, you have to make sure that you take care of their welfare also. Other welfare, not really related to, because when you resettle, then their, the cultural value, the geographic, the sensitivities, the affinity to their traditional land and all comes in. But I think you have to make sure that, but you also don't move them too far away from the original land, I think. You just have to look for places which is closer to the original settlement so that they have the feeling that they're not really moving away from their original land. Yeah.
Fantastic. Have we got any more questions? Can I give you this one?
Oh, now it's working. Thank you so much. My name is Steve Tarakan. I'm the Deputy Head of Mission for the Swiss Embassy. Allow me 1 minute short comment, but I would just like to thank the organizer to bring this up. As you have heard, Switzerland is a big supporter for this whole process, and we would like to acknowledge the support or the work, for example, of Tajikistan hosting the first glacier conference, but also, of course, Peru, Bhutan, and Georgia in this field. And we are very deeply concerned, Switzerland, that these rapid changes in the cryosphere, and we're at the forefront in the research, but also looking for practical solutions. So it's really great to see so many partners here in the room. And we really continue to strongly advocate and continue a partnership with the mountain regions worldwide. So it's really, as we saw, it affects all different areas. And as a final comment, what's changing at an alarming pace in our mountains is far-reaching consequences for our lowlands as well. We saw the picture of our town in Platten. It only makes sense to think that hydrological cycles and ecological connectivities have to be in a more integrated way. So it all happens at altitude, but ultimately it also shapes the security ecosystem downstream. So with that, thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Hi, thanks. My name is Johanna Varner. I am an alpine ecologist, but I'm also here on behalf of the Citizen Science Global Partnership. And a lot of my work focuses on engaging local communities and helping to monitor the species that I study. And I wondered if any of you see an opportunity for engaging local communities in helping to collect the monitoring data on how things are changing in your mountains. Thank you.
Fantastic. Who would like to answer that question? Great.
I would like to add some ideas, especially because in Peru we have a local communities, and it's important to keep in mind something. In Peru, it's very symbolic, the relationship between local communities and the mountains, especially the high mountains. We call us Apu. Apu in Quechua means Lord of the Mountain. It's a god for the ancient Peruvians. So it's very interesting, the relationship between also the mountains and the local communities. So, first of all, we need to recognize the traditional knowledge because they were many years before us. They have a system for water harvesting, irrigation system, traditional canals, how to restore the grasslands, the wetlands, the peatlands with natural infrastructure. So we need to mix our strategies, our instruments. For instance, in Peru, we have protected natural areas in the high basins to protect the high part of the rivers. We have also a national park, Huascarán, that basically protects all the white mountains in Peru, and also another instruments or mechanisms. I talk about nature-based solutions for other sectors. Also, we have a retribution mechanism to prevent and to reinforce the ecosystem services to regulate water, but this need to mix with local communities because local communities live there.
Fantastic. And Mia, would you like to say something?
Thank you so much. I will also briefly react question regarding the early warning system. So we are now in Georgia expanding our multi-hazard early warning systems in line with WMO and EU standard, WMO and EU standards. We are modernizing forecasting platforms and strengthening data analysis capabilities. We are developing comprehensive hazard mapping and modeling methodologies. It's fully in line with the European standards also. Our supporter is Switzerland, and we are very thankful for Switzerland. And so this is kind financial support for Green Climate Fund. So we are now enhancing monitoring in periglacier zones, and we are improving drought monitoring and climate services for agriculture. And finally, we are now preparing our national adaptation plan, and we will have strong communication with local communities, local population, because only local communities know the real challenges, faces, problems, and how to react them and improve the situation. So we are ready to continue work with UNEP, WMO member states, and the global scientific community to strengthen mountain resilience and advance a safer, more sustainable future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have time for... Thank you. We have time for one last question. Anyone got a pressing, burning question on International Mountain Day? No? Going, gone. Fantastic. So now what we want to do is, remember at the beginning of this, and thank you all so much for your interventions. We've got two quick things before you leave stage. The first is that initially there was going to be a movie, which is a very, very powerful testimony, and I wonder if we can first just show the movie. Thank you. I think that the movie is frozen. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a group photograph. Can the photographer come up while you unfreeze the movie? Is the photographer also frozen? Come on. Please, don't leave me here. Great. Are you the official photographer? No. But you've got a camera in your hand. You are the appointed photographer. Please come up onto stage, and can we have everybody standing up just for an official photograph? Thank you so much. And can I just ask, Susan, would you mind also coming up onto stage, please? Thank you so much. Can you hold the movie till our new official photographer has taken the photograph? Fantastic, thank you so much. And then now quickly, have you got the movie? Is it ready? Let's show us the movie, come on. Thank you all so much.
My granddaughter, I don't know if she will see them all.
The Earth's going to survive. It's survived worse than the human race, but it may just wipe us out in the process of surviving.
We are the first documentary film team to be invited by NASA.
Changing seasons, changing maximum temperatures, shifting vegetation. All these things are very clear sign that we have a changing climate, and that's not disputable.
Let's do it.
I don't think there would be a better way to film the glacier than to use free flight. They look threatening from where I was, and they look threatening to the town below.
Today there was another guide that was killed up on the ridge because of the soft snow.
It's pretty exposed here, I'm not gonna lie to you. If you mess up, you die. That's as far out of my comfort zone as I could possibly go.
If they don't do anything right now, in the future we are going to look back and we will either laugh at them or we will hate them.
It's not just about hugging whales and being sympathetic to the penguins. It's about our future. It all ties together.
We probably have 10 years still ahead of us to really change. If we lose these 10 years, it's going to be really hard to live on this planet.
Thank you. So now I want to invite onto stage Matthias. Matthias is the Program Managing Officer for UNEP. He is from Austria. He's absolutely passionate about mountains and ice. Come up onto stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Luis. And yeah, I have different names. Some call me Mountain Man, some call me Austrian Gazelle, Mountain Gazelle. Very pleasure to welcome you. You obviously, it's working? Yeah, you obviously set the bar very high in terms of moderation, and there's obviously also big footsteps to step in. I have size 45, so I'm not too far away. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our second segment, and we will deep dive a bit more into the kind of solutions and take also a deep dive more in some of the regions, in particular the Hindu-Kush Himalayan region, but also the Alpine region and the East African region. And we also have representation you will hear later on from the lowland country, and you're probably quite curious to hear about what's the connection with the lowland country, but I will come to that. But please let me first take the opportunity to welcome Ms. Elfriede Anamora, the head of the International Department and in the Federal Ministry of Austria, representing Austria, of course, but also the Alps. Yes, please come to the stage. Then my next speaker is Ms. Baba Khan, who is the regional team lead, working for ICIMOD, and I'm sure you all know ICIMOD, which is a well-known institution in the Hindu-Kush Himalayan region, and reach a kind of really inspirational center for many other mountain regions about the world. Thank you very much. And then I also would like to invite Mr. Raphaël Lelouvier, project officer with the Permanent Secretariat of the Alpine Convention. And then also Mr. Kelvin Courier, country director of Villel Yuppe, I hope I pronounced it correctly, which is a Kenyan NGO. And we also have another speaker, and we'll then probably introduce him when he's joining us. But let me please continue without further ado. So we have heard a bit more about the challenges and also about the linkages between mountains and the wider world, but now we are quite curious to hear about the solutions. And I would like to start in particular with you, Elfie. We've heard mountain ecosystems, and of course, are mostly transboundary and regional by nature. What happens to communities on one side of the mountain often also affects, as we heard, other communities on the other side. How do you address this need for regional exchange and collaboration in your mountain area, the Alps, of course, and what are kind of regional solutions that exist?
Thank you very much, Matthias. First of all, happy International Mountain Day to everybody. And congratulations to UNEP for the organization of this event today. Really very interesting presentations and already very good discussion. So Austria, of course, as a mountainous country, we are very much attached to the topic we are discussing today. We are proud host of the Secretariat of the Alpine Convention, but of course also very close cooperation with UNEP, with the office in Vienna, with particular focus on mountains and ecosystems, and also the Secretariat of the Carpathian Convention. And what we see from that is that, of course, regional cooperation is very important and is key. What we see in the Alps is that climate change in the Alps is twice as large as the average in the Northern Hemisphere. So you could, of course, imagine that the impacts in the Alpine regions is very high, and this ranges from less snow to retrieving glaciers to thawing permafrost. Etc. And our experience, of course, is that we cannot find solutions just for us in Austria, and that's why we are really trying to have a good cooperation with all the Alpine countries in the framework of the Alpine Convention. There was we created or launched the Alpine Climate Board back in 2016, and I think Raphael might provide some more detailed information on that. But the idea of this cooperation is to work together to reach the goal of climate neutral and climate resilient Alps by 2050. And we are focusing on specific topics like energy or nature-based solutions, lifestyles, etc. And one of the lessons learned from that work is that one needs to engage all the actors. So you need to have close cooperation of all the Alpine countries, but involving all the relevant stakeholders, also local communities, what we heard earlier on. And what you really need is, because cooperation is not just happening, so you need people to take care of that, and that's why in the Alpine Climate Board we have so-called caretakers to make sure that really cooperation is happening and that we are trying to achieve our common goals in the Alpine region. In general, I would say that also what we are trying to do is to work together with other regions, other mountainous regions, like I also already said, like the Carpathians, but of course also together with UNEP, and we're happy to have a good cooperation there on mountain adaptation, working with other regions in the world to share lessons learned, to share experience, how to foster climate action in mountain regions.
Thank you very much, Elfie. Before I continue, I would like to now invite also our last but not least speaker, Mr. Thomas Schoos, Director General for International European and Internal Affairs of the Federal Ministry of Environment, Biodiversity and Climate Change of the Government of Luxembourg. You're probably curious to hear what's the connection between Luxembourg and mountains, so we'll come back to that. Please, Thomas, please have the floor. After Elfie's intervention, for you, Barbara, can you deep dive in a bit more? What are the respective solutions in your region, which are, of course, let's say like a Weber, and to what extent they are helpful communities on one side, and also for downstream. So happy to hear the experiences from the Hindu-Kush Himalayan region.
Thank you, Matthias. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude and thanks to UNEP for this invitation and for inviting us to be here with you. It's an honor and pleasure indeed. For those who are not really familiar with the Hindu-Kush Himalaya region, I will briefly say a couple of salient features. In Hindu Kush Himalaya, glaciers are not mere signs of beauty or adventure. They are actually the custodians of our daily life. They silently feed our taps at home. They irrigate our farms where we grow crops for food. They keep the wheel running and they sustain our systems, the ecosystems and the societies. In that sense, Hindu Kush Himalaya is a true global asset. We all know Hindu Kush Himalaya is known for its vast reserves of ice, snow, glacier, but very few may know that it has a great deal of climate regulatory function also because of the largest reserves of snow and ice outside the polar region. There are around 54,000 plus glaciers in the region that provide the headwaters to 10 major river systems of Asia. And these major rivers actually irrigate one of the most extensive food baskets that feed around a quarter of the humanity in Asia. Unfortunately, like many other mountain regions, Hindu Kush Himalaya is also facing the brunt of climate change. A very recent study, which ISIMOT published, we call it HIWISE, Himalayan Ice, Water, Society and Ecosystems Report, that concluded that the glaciers in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region are melting 65% faster than just the previous decade. So you can imagine the amplitude of the problem there. On one hand, it's creating a huge crisis of irrigation water supply to mountain agriculture, but also water supply for industry, hydropower, fisheries, and many other things downstream. But at the same time, because of a situation like too much water and too little water, we are really suffering from the floods at the same time because of the melting of the glaciers. There is another interesting phenomenon happening is about the seasonal snow persistence. There's a continuous decrease in seasonal snow persistence, which means that over the period of time in the coming years, there will be less snow cover available, and there will be a drought, persistent drought down the road. Glacier lakes outburst floods, some of the speakers before us also mentioned about that, is an increasing phenomena with a huge risk not only to the mountain communities, nearly 250 million people living in the Hindu Kush Himalayan mountains, but is a great deal of disastrous account for the people living downstream. It's around 1.6 billion people. So climate change in particular, but its impact on glaciers in particular, is actually a big risk and emerging threat for our region. Changing glaciers is not only a change in the glacier mass, it's actually a change in the entire ecosystem. It changes everything. As I said, irrigation, hydropower, food production, disasters. It has a great deal of impact on local communities. Generally, in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, around 30 to 40% of the irrigation water is coming from glacial melt. But if you move to the western part of Himalayas, this percentage increases up to 80% of the irrigation water coming from the glacial melt. When the snow cover changes, obviously it impacts the habitats. There is a precedence of shifting ecotones habitat shifts, rangeland qualities, pasture qualities, and it's all affecting the people and people's livelihood in the mountain regions. ICIMOD, being a regional intergovernmental knowledge organization, is working in 8 countries of the Hindu Kush Himalaya, where we try to develop institutional mechanisms to foster dialogue on these transboundary and regional issues. We generate, rather co-generate, scientific knowledge and evidence to support the policy and informed decisions. And we are engaging other important segments of the society, like the parliamentarians, who have a great role in actually making legislation and reviewing policies. We are engaging them, and I will talk about these solutions in the next round.
Thank you very much. That was quite an interesting deep dive into the Hindu Kush Himalayan. Now, Thomas, you have the floor. I'm sure participants are quite curious to hear what's the connection between Luxembourg as a lowland country with the mountains. Obviously, you have been known to be a champion in supporting transformative action, in particular on the climate nation axis. Thomas, can you please tell us a bit more about what you have been supporting and where the mountain connection comes in?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? Luxembourg is not necessarily famous for high mountains and a particularly large country with ice caps, much to the contrary. We're a small territory, but we're very strong in resolve, and we have a very, very strong connection to nature. It's a very green country. And so the environmental case coming from us, and let's say that sort of political momentum is very strong in Luxembourg. So we show up in the world with ambition in terms of climate and environment. And we try to be pioneers in quality, because we know that it's for other countries and it's for other regions to find solutions, mostly to their own problems, but also to solve, well, let's say, to save the world on the hectare in the volume. We can't do that, but we can figure out what the right way is, what the scientific truth is, and then move on that oversight that we can get through the right evidence base, and then move on that. We also want to follow a nexus approach, meaning that we see the climate change as the driver of urgency across all environmental domains. So we see more urgency and more challenges in all of the domains. So it's not enough to just do a sort of shopping list of things that interest you, but really to figure out in a given ecosystem what are the things that we can handle that show the best results. So we have, in order to learn in this, it's very much being open and having the humility to, when you start out as Luxembourgers, you don't have a clue about any of these things except that you are science-based and you have maybe your environmentalist experts on board, but you go into the territories and you figure things out. And so we have dedicated circular economy projects, and we have water projects, and of course climate, the different climate domains, but always under a nexus approach. And so we have one mountain project, and it's with UNEP, it's with you, Matthias, and your teams, and it's called Vanishing Treasures. And it's very much dear to our hearts, and we've been doing it for many years now. It's more than 15 million euros, or close to 15 million euros that we've spent so far. We will go further with it. It's in 4 global mountain regions. So it's in the Virunga, for those that are familiar. It's basically Rwanda, Ugandan side, on the volcanoes, the gorillas, the mountain gorillas. It's in Bhutan, and that's why I stepped out with the minister from Bhutan. It's the tiger in Bhutan that over the years that we've worked with them has actually come back in numbers. Same with the gorillas. Then there's in the Central Asian region, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, sorry, the snow leopard. And then very new now in the mountain region in the Andes, between Ecuador and Colombia, the spectacle bear. So it's always transborder, and it's always mountain regions, and it's always that nexus approach that we try to figure out. So climate change is driving aggravated human-wildlife conflict. So prey populations go down for these species. Livelihoods of people become more complicated. Some of them move up in the mountains, species move down into the mountains. So it's very much about, if you want to protect these wildlife species, the only effective way you can do it is by thinking of the communities that interact with them or that live in their zone, in their habitat, and then figuring out ways to reduce that conflict. And so we do that by also focusing on their livelihoods, their income, help for self-help. So very much it's also about creating new revenue streams, figuring out how they can organize better as communities to maybe move out of that sort of business as usual that has caused them to have that conflict. So it's a little bit, let's say, large scale the way I portray it now, but because it's 4 different regions, and anybody who's active in biodiversity, in finance for nature, it's messy business. It's every community is different, or at least every landscape. You know, how is the water cycle? How is the farming situation? The setup is always specific, and so you have to find solutions with all the creativity and intelligence you can muster up together in these regions. So they're very distinct, and they're very dear to our hearts. And we will invest more deeply in them over the years to come. I think I'll stop there. That's the story of Luxembourg in the mountains in 5 minutes. So back to you, Matthias.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and of course we're very grateful for your continued support. And yeah, if you're curious to learn more about, please, there's also Charlotte, my colleagues in the room, who can tell more about this project. My next speaker is actually, staying in the region, I would say, and speaking about communities and solution. Kelvin, you work very much at the grassroots level with an NGO. Can you tell us a bit more how you actually use technology to observe the linking cryosphere in the areas you work, in particular, or what you do in terms of raising awareness with youth and communities?
Thank you for the question. Vilele Veupe is very honored to represent here. Vilele Veupe is Kiswahili for White Peaks, representing Mount Kenya. So how we've been using technology to create awareness around the vanishing glaciers of Mount Kenya, which, unlike in the Himalayas, they do not contribute significantly to the water runoff in our rivers. But however, they have been an archival system story for the story of climate change in the tropics of Africa. So we've been using technology to try and create awareness around the vanishing glaciers. So one of the projects we've had is we're installing a time-lapse camera on Mount Kenya to try and document the last moment of the Lewis Glacier. We've also done social media campaigns, like we have the love letters, which you may have in your seats, where mountain enthusiasts wrote love letters to the glaciers of Mount Kenya. The third way we've used technology is that we have used satellite imagery to try and look at the glaciers and the vanishing. So the problem with satellite imagery is that it's difficult to try and observe smaller glaciers like the ones on Mount Kenya with satellite imagery. And that's why we thought integrating the time-lapse camera would be a great idea. The other way we've done is that we have monitored remote sensing data around surface temperatures, atmospheric temperatures on the mountain to try and create a context of why the glaciers are vanishing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Some of you might have seen there was quite some social media going on actually today with actually real-life satellite imagery. I've seen it on the European Space Agency, seeing how really small the remaining parts of the glaciers on Mount Kenya are. Last but not least, looking at my time, I don't want to miss going back to the Alpine region. And Raphael, sorry, could you tell us a bit more what are you doing within the context of the Alpine Convention addressing glaciers and snow ice-related topics?
Yes, thank you, and thank you also for the invitation and for organising this wonderful event. Just first, my slides are already there. Can I maybe have the ticket for the slides? Make it easier. And on wary of time, yes. So actually, thanks a lot for asking this question. As what you said before, that's one of the main reasons why the Alpine Convention actually exists. So as you said, we often have communities on each side of the mountain. They're often facing very, very similar challenges, but they live in different countries. So in general, whole mountain chains will often display strong biogeographic continuity, sometimes even cultural, but they're traversed by one or more artificial boundaries, and that will lead to very different local administration. And so I have two maps here that sort of illustrate this, and I'll be focusing on the European Alps because that's where we walk, but much of what I say is actually applicable elsewhere. So here there's a satellite image of Europe, and in white in the middle you see the Alps thanks to the snow cover, the dividing southern and from Central Europe. And this image shows no borders, so the Alps as a continuous mountain chain really stand out. Now, if we zoom here on the Alps, this time with the borders of the Alpine Convention, and especially if I highlight the borders, the national borders, it's clear that the Alps are really cut into smaller parts. And these belong to the 8 countries or the 8 contracting parties of the Alpine Convention, with the 9th signatory being the European Union. Now, I won't have time to explain everything that we do, but the Alpine Convention is first and foremost a convention, so it's a legal treaty with abiding protocols, but it was also created to solve the problem that was just mentioned. So by creating a platform for exchange and for building a joint strategy for the whole Alpine arc, which would not be possible at national level. So concretely, what we try to do is to create as many bridges and opportunities for exchange as possible. For example, through working groups on different topics, which will then address the topic from an Alpine-wide perspective with representatives from all Alpine countries and all the stakeholders. And this creates a lot of positive friction, if you can call it like that, and in a way, a common understanding of the European Alps, which is really what we're trying to push for. So these types of solutions are also what we advocate to address cryosphere change, and we need to have all actors at the same table, addressing it through a regional structure like the Alpine Convention. And this also helps us to ensure that the topic is being given enough attention and is taken up by contracting parties whose capitals are often located quite far away from the mountains. So this is what we do, but then on this slide, I'd just like to highlight some of the few glaciers that we have. That's obviously not all of them. And remember, the first image that I showed was only snow cover. What could be typical on an average winter day in Europe. But of course, our actual glaciers are few, and unfortunately, and as you all know, getting fewer as climate change progresses. So for example, Slovenia on the southeastern part of the Alps recently lost its last glaciers and joined the ranks of countries without any glaciers. So people living there or in other mountain regions in the world, they're really seeing every day the speed at which our environment is changing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raphael. And this is really inspiring. I think we got a very interesting idea about climate, nature, and access solution, how we're dealing with community preparedness for disaster and also regional approaches. In the interest of time, and also not the interest only of our melting glaciers, but also melting audience, as you can see, I would really love to go a second round of questions, and I know my team prepared a lot of efforts with you in preparing that, but I would hope you're okay that we continue. I would like to thank very much our panel speakers for your participation and contribution. And you may stay or go back to the panel as you wish. This is, of course, still a day of celebration, and of course, sometimes used as an opportunity and often used for launching not only publications, but also tools. And of course, it's not our mountain team in ecosystems, which is doing a lot of mountain work, but of course, we have a lot of other units and teams in our organizations doing fantastic work on mountains. And I also would like, still before we come to the closing remarks, taking the opportunity to introduce you to our colleague, Faustina Strauss, who is the head of the Disaster Risk Reduction Unit. And and she's actually launching something new and actually a framework for assessing climate and disaster-induced loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services with a specific focus on glaciers. And I'm sure this is very interesting, and again, taking we out us a bit of the mountain bubble. So we're very much looking forward. So please stay with us before you can all enjoy your cold drinks, because I'm sure this will be quite fascinating to hear too.
Hi, everyone. I know that already it has been a very, very dense session with a lot of information, so I'm going to try my best to not overwhelm you and to keep it short and sweet as much as possible. So today I'm here to talk about Frame ECHO. This is a nifty UN acronym, another one. We love them. I'll make sure to plug some into this presentation. So we're going to unpack this one actually. Frame ECHO actually stands for Framework for Assessing Disaster and Climate-Related Losses of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, and I promise you that by the end of this session you will know what that all means. So here we go. Okay, this is a slightly older version of the presentation. I have a nice slide here, which I will just then describe to you instead of actually showing it to you. But basically, we need to start first by understanding what we mean by losses. So not all losses can be measured in dollars or even in Kenyan shillings. When ecosystems collapse, species disappear, or cultural heritage is destroyed, the impacts go far beyond economics. Biodiversity loss means losing pollinators that sustain our food systems, forests that regulate our climate, and species that hold untapped potential for medicine and innovation. The impacts can be both immediate and long-term and cascading. Cascading means that they trigger a chain of interconnected consequences. What does this mean? For example, biodiversity loss can increase soil erosion, which heightens flood and landslide risks. Melting glaciers, which we've heard a lot about today, can disrupt water supplies, leading to droughts and food insecurity. And degraded ecosystems can amplify the severity of future disasters. These cascading effects make communities more vulnerable to multiple hazards over time. Mountains and glaciers, as we have heard from many of the speakers today, are at risk. Melting ice threatens water supplies for millions, while the loss of unique alpine ecosystems erodes biodiversity and cultural identity. These changes, they weaken resilience, they disrupt livelihoods, and they diminish the natural and cultural wealth that these communities depend on. So these kinds of, normally losses and damages are classified by two types. There are economic losses and there are non-economic losses. Economic losses are those that are tangible and quantifiable, for example, damage to infrastructure or declines in agricultural output. Now, non-economic losses and damages, or there's another nifty acronym here, NELD, are a little bit more difficult and more complex to define. They're trickier because they're harder to measure, really. So understanding NELD, or non-economic loss and damages, is essential because it reminds us that climate change is not just an economic challenge. It's a human and ecological one. Protecting biodiversity, mountains, and glaciers is protecting life itself for today and for generations to come. So, what is UNEP doing about this? A couple years ago, at the 2004 edition of the Asia-Pacific Adaptation Network Forum, or APAN, if we want to add another acronym, at this meeting, a group of like-minded and interested colleagues from UNEP, UNDRR, and UN University got together and came up with a project idea to develop a framework to assess losses of biodiversity and ecosystem services. UNEP and UNDRR are co-managing the project, Frame ECHO, with UNUEHS, or the Institute for Environment and Human Security in Bonn, as the brain power behind. They are the implementing partners. So, what is the background to the project? The project is anchored in the recognition that a warming of 1.5 to 2 Celsius will accelerate biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation. This impacts quality of life. Declining benefits from nature jeopardize the well-being of current and of future generations. However, this issue is often overlooked. Biodiversity and ecosystem services losses remain largely unrecognized in policy and in planning. Understanding these losses is essential to design effective disaster risk reduction strategies and to address cascading impacts on communities. In order to be able to do that, we need to examine the complexities and the gaps. Loss and damage discussions are growing, but challenges persist due to varied definitions, complex estimation processes, and a lack of standardized frameworks, and this is where we come in. So our Frame ECHO project addresses existing capacity constraints Without clear methods to address and monitor biodiversity and ecosystem services losses, countries would otherwise struggle to respond effectively. Okay. So, what are the objectives? This project actually aims to develop a framework for assessing disaster and climate-related losses of biodiversity and ecosystem services. And by doing so, we expect to improve an understanding and recognition of these losses, guide countries in using available data. They already have this knowledge, they have this data. We just need to help them use that and provide them with tools for assessments and support more effective national programming to avert, minimize, and address impacts. So this illustration is basically a snapshot of the framework itself. This will help us clearly understand how climate change and disasters affect nature. So the proposed framework, and there's a very complicated explanation, and then there's a more simple one, which I'm going to try to give you. The proposed framework looks essentially at two things. The first is climate and hazards, from sudden disasters like floods to slow changes like droughts, with climate change as the major driver. The second is ecosystems and biodiversity, their size, their condition, including species, and the benefits they provide, like clean water and pollination. When these two overlap in time and space, losses occur. Tracking them together helps us see where and when nature is under threat. The framework works at any scale. It could be national, local, global, using different data sources. Also, besides measuring losses, it can guide better planning, support nature-based solutions, and strengthen policies. So we also are not suggesting that FrameEco is the only thing out there that deals with this. In fact, it also links, and we're intentionally ensuring that we find linkages with other products. For example, our partner UNDRR has recently launched the Delta Resilience, which is a new disaster tracking system that they developed together with WMO and UNDP. It will provide a standardized way to record losses from extreme events, and it uses UNDRR's hazard classification and aims to include non-economic losses alongside traditional damage data. So our proposed framework, FrameEco, actually complements Delta by helping gather additional data needed for their assessments and by making it easier to understand and address the full range of climate and disaster-related impacts. So, before Philippines, well, again, it's a little bit of an older version, but that's okay. We wanted to make sure also that we talk about how we apply this to glacial retreat. So just to say a few words to link it to the conversations that have been ongoing. So glacial retreat, as we know, is a slow onset hazard driven by climate change. It requires careful tracking and changes in ice extent and volume over time. So to understand its impacts, we monitor glaciers using satellite imagery to measure their size and their mass balance, assess their condition through indicators like albedo, and examine the ecosystem services they provide, such as fresh water supply. So combining hazard data with ecosystem and biodiversity information helps us capture and reveal the full picture of risks and losses. So that's one way of looking at the loss and damage issue in relation to glaciers. Now, we've developed the framework, so what's the next step? The next step, as they say, and the proof will be in the pudding, is that we have to put the framework in place, and we do that by testing it. So we're already doing this in the Philippines. My colleague just came back from a mission there. We selected the Philippines because they're highly vulnerable to climate change and disasters, and they also have rich biodiversity. And they are already looking at these issues. So FrameEco is actually building on existing national initiatives and adding value, especially by addressing slow onset events. There are already several initiatives ongoing in the country, and these include the ones that you see on the screen. So what does this championing look like? Given our starting point, our activities focus on building strong connections between FrameEco and those existing initiatives that are already happening in the Philippines. We're kicking off this process by mapping these initiatives and identifying synergies. After that, we will conduct 2 loss assessments, one for an extreme event and another for a slow onset process. Then we will validate those findings with local stakeholders. Finally, from all that information, we will develop recommendations to make Frame Eco more applicable and to complement ongoing efforts in the Philippines. So this work both will help us to further develop and refine the framework itself, but also contribute to how the Philippines is looking at these issues. So the championing will deliver 2 key outputs. There will be a case study report on loss assessment and a report capturing lessons learned with, of course, guidance for next steps. And the ultimate product will be that the Philippines can use this as a springboard, showing how Frame Eco can be scaled up and applied in other countries, bringing biodiversity and ecosystem loss assessments into the global practice. The timeline for this is about 18 months. So for, if you're wondering how long it takes to champion this Frame Eco, it's about 18 months for this piloting, but that's not where the work ends. After that, our intention or our goal is to spark interest and to replicate this in other countries. We're already in some early conversations with places like Nepal, which of course, as we all know, has iconic mountain systems. So we're definitely looking forward to that. And also, we would love to work with the mountain experts in this room to design and to undertake this work and to see how we could take Frame Eco and really apply it to understand what all of these losses that we have been talking about in terms of our glaciers, in terms of our mountains, actually really mean. So if you're interested, please come talk to us afterwards. We're happy to answer any questions and also to discuss what this might look like in applying in your context. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Franziska. More content, more ideas to digest, but of course we all know this is a very intense unit, and I know that all our brains are working and digesting all the tons of information that we've collected, and I'm sure we did our great job in making sure that you get a lot of mountain additional information today. Without further ado, I would like to hand over now to my Deputy Director, Doreen Robinson, in the Ecosystems Division, please for her closing remarks to come to the podium. Doreen, of course, is now representing a lot of ecosystems and as part of her job, but of course, since we both got to know each other originally as the head of the wildlife unit chief right before the pandemic starts, she always kept the mountains flag high in our organizations, so big thanks to her in this respect.
No one could work with Matthias and not hold the mountain flag. I wouldn't get away. So, colleagues and friends, it's a hot room, so I'm not, and I think there's cold drinks somewhere. Maybe not glacial cold, but cold drinks, so I'll let you get to it. But we've heard it here today. There's broad agreement that glaciers and snowmelt is a global interconnected challenge, one that demands multilateral awareness, clear goals, and above all, real action and sustained financing and innovative financing. The most critical pathway for preserving glaciers is, of course, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. There's no way around it. But as glaciers succumb to the pressures that we humans put upon them, ecological boundaries are crossed and changed. And that means people's lives are changed. We must ensure their conservation and protect the most vulnerable people through appropriate tools so that ecosystem services they provide, and we heard about them all, freshwater, biodiversity, food, medicine, climate regulation, all of it remains secure for future generations. We've seen in this discussion very much present here at UNEA 7 with the draft resolution, hopefully not just draft soon, on the preservation of glaciers in the broader cryosphere. And in particular, it focuses on mountain regions. And we believe it's in the final stages of negotiations. This resolution aims to address both the drivers and consequences of cryosphere loss, and I think that's an important part of our discussion today, that we have to go to the drivers. It asks us to apply ecosystem and community-centered approaches, much of what you're already doing, including nature-based solutions, ecosystem-based adaptation to protect people and landscapes. And we've heard a lot of good examples today. UNEP is already moving forward. You just heard about One Way. We're integrating cryosphere loss, biodiversity, and socio-ecological systems into key studies and assessments to close the science policy gap, and we're working with member states to strengthen knowledge exchange on nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches, including for new post-glacial ecosystem work. Our upcoming program of work reflects this in its commitments, even though it is much shorter, and through the newly approved Resilient Mountains Project, and also with Mountains Adapt and Adaptation Altitude components supported by Austria and the Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation, thank you, in addition to Luxembourg. We're helping countries strengthen resilience in high mountain regions. We're also working on knowledge. We just heard about that. I'm going to skip through this and get to so we can get to drinks. I heard a lot when I came in about science, solutions, and solidarity coming from our panelists. And whether it be through the systems approaches we need to understand the root causes of what's driving threats to our glaciers and mountains, or whether it's about the systemic partnerships needed to respond to those changes. We have the science. We saw that today. It's imperfect, yes, but it's not imperfect enough to know that to avoid knowing that we have a very big problem. And something Frazina said hit me. It's a human problem. I think she said human and ecological, but it's really a human problem. Our mountain ecosystems and our glaciers are not doing this to themselves. We are doing it. And because we're doing it, it's a human solution. We're almost at the end of UNEA. It's been a hard one. This is my 4th one, I think. And it's hard because the problems of the world are getting harder to solve. It's hard because the political will and the collaborative spirit is sometimes getting harder to find. But complex challenges have no simple solutions. So I thank you for sharing your science, your solutions, and your solidarity today. Thank you for sharing the mountain and holding the mountain flag. And please, let's work together to get to the end of this UNEA and make sure that together we continue to support healthy mountain ecosystems and protect our glaciers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Doreen, again, big thanks to all our speakers and of course, for our audience to stay until the very end. I wish you still all of us a successful UNEA and hopefully a successful outcome for glaciers. Big thanks also to my team, Ansgar and Charlotte and Aislinn, who did fantastic work. And yeah, would like to ask, please, to come the last speakers to the podium so we can take a final shot before we finally go to cool off a bit. Thank you. We all fit? Glaciers. And now with the mountain icon, yes? Yes. No vanishing track, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.